When soldiers are speaking out about how unprepared they were in Iran, it doesn't exactly exude the confidence that Trump and his Bromander-in-Chief, Pete Hegseth, have touted.
Iranian drone, a squirter that got through the Army's air defenses.
It happened to hit a tactical operations center that was fortified, but these are powerful weapons.
What fortifications existed there?
I mean, I would put it in the none category from a drone defense capability.
None. There were no fortifications.
None.
It is becoming increasingly apparent that what the soldiers are describing in the Middle East isn't lining up with the narrative being sold to the American people. And they're speaking out. Speaking publicly for the first time, survivors of the deadliest Iranian attack on US forces since the war began have disputed the Pentagon's description of events and said that their unit in Kuwait was left dangerously exposed when 6 service members were killed and more than 20 wounded. Members of the targeted unit spoke to CBS News and provided a detailed account of the attack and its harrowing aftermath from the perspective of those actually on the ground. Now, their perspective notably ran contrary to the description of events from Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, who described the drone as a, quote, squirter. The soldier said, painting a picture that one squeaked through is a falsehood. This soldier was injured before going on to explain further how, quote, the unit was unprepared to provide any defense for itself.
Everything shook, and it's something like what you see in the movies. You know, everything, your ears are ringing. You know, there's dust and smoke everywhere.
This soldier was part of a crew of about 60 troops stationed at the military post in Kuwait hit by the strike. He says his unit's leadership ordered them there despite intelligence showing it was a potential drone target.
We moved closer to Iran, to a deeply unsafe area that was a known target.
So what was the reason that you were told for why you needed to be there?
I don't think there was a good reason ever articulated.
The attack killed 6 American soldiers and injured dozens more.
Were these deaths preventable?
In my opinion, absolutely yes.
The next day, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth called the Iranian drone a squirter that got through the Army's air defenses.
It happened to hit a tactical operations center that was fortified, but these are powerful weapons.
What fortifications existed there?
I mean, I would put it in the none category from a drone defense capability.
None. There were no fortifications.
None.
A Pentagon spokesperson declined comments citing an active investigation. Regarding the drone attack, though, the department has said consistently all safety measures were taken to safeguard the troops. But Tony, as we've reported before, those troops, the injured ones, they're dealing with a lot of physical wounds, not to mention their emotional scars.
That's bad enough, right? But the details make it worse. According to reporting and analysis from the event itself, the command center was a makeshift trailer structure, and it lacked overhead protection against drones, as well as reports that confirmed warning systems failed to activate in time. And the thing is, this isn't just one incident or just one soldier, right? Across the military, troops are airing concerns and frustrations. Many are questioning the purpose of the war itself and the direction from those in charge. And most striking, there's been a surge in soldiers asking how to leave. On to recent reporting tied to NPR, calls to GI rights groups have increased. Many are asking about becoming conscientious objectors. It appears that internal military dissent is mounting, which should tell you something about the state of affairs regarding this war with Iran.
Within the U.S. military, the Center on Conscience and War is reporting it has seen a spike in inquiries from soldiers seeking conscientious objector status.
Because we have so many people and their families who are desperate to find alternatives to being sent to the Middle East. We have a situation where Trump and his team have launched an unprovoked war with no legitimate rationale, no rational justification, and in partnership with a military that has just committed a genocide in the region.
And as a result, the number of CO clients have gone to record levels, some being recorded mere hours before deployment.
They have imposed this on the American people, the Iranian people, and tens of thousands of service members and their families who believe this is deeply wrong. You know, we haven't just experienced a surge in calls walls of inquiries, but a surge in people who have actually started the process of filing as conscientious objectors, which is a right to all service members to refuse to participate. We have had about 1,000% increase in CO clients just since the beginning of the war. And to put that in perspective, some of our counselors have been doing this for many, many decades and did this through the entire global war on terror, through the worst years of the Iraq war, the worst years of the Afghanistan war, the highest levels of civilian casualties in both of those wars. And what they are saying is the level that they are seeing now of new conscientious objector clients that we have taken on is unlike anything they have ever seen before, including the worst years of those wars. And, you have to imagine relatively, right? That's a small percentage compared to the number of people in the military. I'm not saying there's a mass uprising of people who are filing as CO right now. It's a significant number. But those are just the people who have called our organization and sought out our help, even know that this right exists. So how many people in the military do you think know about the Center on Conscience and War? Probably not that many. And so while it's a relatively small number compared to the hundreds of thousands of people in the military, I would imagine a very small subset actually know about our organization. And we find that the more we're able to reach, the more people will be calling us to file this conscientious objection claim.
Now, you layer all that with what is happening at the very top. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth has come under increased scrutiny for firing senior military leadership.
In our politics lead, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth fired the U.S. Army Chief of Staff, General Randy George, and 2 other top Army generals on Thursday. Dismissals that come as the U.S. appears poised to intensify strikes, and the Pentagon is weighing a potential ground invasion in Iran. In a post, Chief Pentagon spokesman Sean Parnell framed General George's firing as a retirement, effective immediately. A U.S. official told CNN that senior Army leadership had been caught off guard. Quote, "It doesn't feel like a very thought out decision," unquote. Now, I have been personally covering General Randy George's career for about 15 years. I wrote a book in 2012 about the ill-fated combat outpost Keating, which had been in 2006 placed in a dangerous position in Afghanistan. Those who know General Randy George consider him to be well-respected, smart, strategic, someone who acts with the best interests of his service members and the United States at the top of his mind. His dismissal, along with that of Chief of Chaplains Major General William Green Jr. and Commander of Army Transformation and Training Command General David Hodney, are just the latest in a string of abrupt firings that Hegseth has carried out inside the Pentagon since he took office. Hegseth has fired more than a dozen senior military officers over the last year. In fact, he's almost completely remade the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Just 2 officials remain from before President Trump took office. Marine Corps Commandant General Eric Smith and Chief of Space Operations General B. Chance Saltzman. Now, you might have noticed if you look at that photo, Hegseth's version of the Joint Chiefs, those are entirely white men, despite the fact that as of 2024, nearly 33% of active duty service members are of color and nearly 18% are women. Hegseth made it quite clear that that type of representation in the top ranks does not matter to him.
The era of DEI is gone at the Defense Department, and we need the best and brightest.
Physical standards must be high and gender neutral. If women can make it, excellent. If not, it is what it is. We're reviving the warrior ethos. We're eliminating the distractions and the debris. No more DEI.
2 of the first leaders Hegseth let go were former Joint Chiefs Chair General C.Q. Brown, the second black officer to hold that post, and Chief of Naval Operations Lisa Franchetti, the first woman to lead the U.S. Navy.
I am shocked. Well, not that shocked.
Moving key legal oversight structures and eliminating units focused on civilian harm mitigation. The people who are put in place to try to ensure that the U.S. military don't bomb schools.
The argument is that I, a couple years ago, worked alongside my colleagues to pass into law something called the Civilian Protection Center. This is something that's at the Department of Defense, at the Pentagon, something that has personnel who are focused on this effort of ensuring protection of civilians, of reducing the risks that we see unfold here. The problem, though, is Secretary Hegseth decided to gut this office last year, has dramatically reduced down the staff, not implementing the budget that is necessary. Again, this was a bipartisan piece of legislation passed into law that I helped draft because of this. I worked at the National Security Council. I've been there for targeting packages for a president to approve. This fault lies directly on President Trump and Secretary Secretary Hegseth. They are clearly the ones that gave the orders in terms of how they should go about the risk analysis. And without this type of office, it shows just how much this administration has deprioritized the protection of civilians. And now we find ourselves facing one of the worst losses of life of civilians at the hands of Americans in decades.
It appears that internal guardrails are being removed to allow for what he has constantly touted as more lethality, which in response to a former general said, this is a language that lends itself to future war crimes.
We also don't fight with stupid rules of engagement. We untie the hands of our warfighters to intimidate, demoralize, hunt, and kill the enemies of our country.
Those are the words of a potential war criminal right there. And that is not the advice and counsel and direction that any Secretary of Defense should be providing our soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines. It puts them actually in greater danger. The Secretary of Defense is a disgraced major that was kicked out of the DC National Guard. He has no qualifications whatsoever to be the Secretary of Defense other than his extreme loyalty to the president. Again, those are the words of a potential war criminal.
And you put all this together, right? You get soldiers on the ground saying that they were unprotected, survivors contradicting official narratives from the White House, and troops seeking ways out of the war while leadership structures are being dismantled. Doesn't exactly scream functioning system, does it?
To have something new to say today, we could replay the tapes of all of the Republicans that have been critical of this, or at least had some very serious questions that I think is fair when your country is engaged in a war that hasn't been pitched, sold to the American public, and when the approval is so low. And what I think about this evening's address is that the president is frustrated by the other messengers who have been out here talking about this, that he gets the feedback that the goals have not been properly communicated, that the American public doesn't understand why he went in, why he did it this way, what we have accomplished and what the exit strategy is, and that he thinks he is his best advocate and the best advocate for the American military and for our mission there. And so he's out there doing it. And the 4 goals that have been outlined, at least in what they leaked to the press, are even different from what Secretary Rubio said just 2 days ago. Because on Rubio's list, he did not have anything about a nuclear weapon. And that's back on the list, because that is the most important thing. That's the thing that people can identify with, where you say you can't have a nuclear Iran. Now, a lot of swirl about what the JCPOA had gotten us and whether we could have done a deal that was reminiscent of that, plus some extra checks. I know that there are critics of that deal, even on the Democratic side. That's out there, but he is undoubtedly being forced into this position because of, and he poo-pooed it, but over $4 for gas. His approval rating in now every poll that we've seen this week is in the 30s. We're not even talking about the low 40s. The CNN poll, he's -24 with men, -2 with white voters who don't have a college degree, -17 with seniors, and 65% say that his policies are making their economic conditions worse. That is unsustainable. Not even if you're thinking about a midterm. You just can't go through the rest of an administration like that. 2 big questions for me. What does he say about the NATO alliance? We talked about the impact of the Strait of Hormuz on our European partners there in the region. That's a very serious thing to be lobbying, that we would want to leave. He needs Senate approval. McConnell and Chris Coons are out with a statement saying that you need Senate approval for that, which Marco Rubio knows. Secondly, the same Polymarket wallet that put a $500,000 bet on the exact timing of the first bomb that we dropped in Iran has put an $800,000 bet that there's going to be a ground invasion. So are we now looking at a ground invasion that's coming through? And also, I would love to know who has this information and is playing the betting markets. Who knows?
So when soldiers start speaking out, even cautiously, it's worth taking notice.
Love this video? Support independent media and unlock exclusive content, ad-free videos, and custom emojis by becoming a paid member of our YouTube channel today. You can also gift memberships to others. Let's keep growing together.